think a lot of people think of First Lite as a Western hunting company, and rightfully so. I mean, that's where First Lite started. That's where they're essentially what their roots are. That's really evolved, and it's evolved through the people we've brought on board. There's a ton of employees that their roots are in the Midwest. They cut their teeth hunting whitetails. People like myself that live, sleep, eat, and breathe this stuff on a daily basis.
Well, I honestly wouldn't be surprised too if there's deer moving down here.
There is a ton of whitetail knowledge at First Lite, and I think now as the customer, you're really getting to see that come to life through the products that we're putting out. The development of Specter really happened in a series of steps. We have a proven scientific algorithm that we've used to develop both Fusion and Cypher, and that was kind of our starting point. We basically used that same algorithm, but we applied it to a whitetail specific scenario. So, the majority of whitetail hunting is done in a tree stand, and it's done from an elevated position. So we modified that algorithm to look at the shapes of leaves, the shapes of sticks and branches and tree trunks, the angles that those things intertwine with each other at, the depth that's present there. So after that, basically what happened is we then honed in on both the micro and macro elements of this pattern and looked at what do those elements need to be based on the engagement distances in which they need to be effective. So, whitetail hunting happens in a variety of scenarios. The first scenario, picture yourself on the edge of a food plot and your target buck steps out at 150 yards. Where this pattern shines in that specific instance is you need to have a macro breakup that will disrupt your body outline shape. We then took the macro portion of our pattern and we started modifying it to make sure that, from that 150, 200 yards all the way into 50 yards, that macro portion of the pattern is disrupting the outline of your body so that deer cannot pick up on that human figure up in the tree. The second portion of that is, what we kind of call or refer to as like the hot zone. So that 50 yards and in. This is going to be the engagement distance in which, hopefully you're going to be able to get a shot at the deer. And you need to be able to move to draw your bow back and still remain completely invisible. So at that engagement distance, the engagement angle changes significantly. It's a much higher angle that deer is looking up at you. And this is where the micro portion of the pattern really comes into play. So we started modifying that micro portion of the pattern to make sure that none of the macro portion of the pattern, none of the colors would blob at that distance, or isoluminesce, if you will. So really that micro pattern was honed in to make sure that, from 50 yards to 0 yards, whether that deer is, at that magical 20-yard mark and you happen to move and looks up at you, or he's right underneath your stand, or he's 50 yards away, the micro portion of that pattern is going to make sure that the deer has, you have that instance where the deer actually looks through you instead of being able to pinpoint a human outline. The step after that was looking at the Pantones, or the colors. So we have our shapes figured out. We have that perfect ratio of macro to micro. We've figured out engagement distance and engagement angles. Now we need to actually place colors to those shapes.
Trying to get Pantones matched and look correct straight across the board.
So what we did is we hand selected every single color, not only for its effectiveness in whitetail environments, whether you're hunting down south or up north, east or west, but also to interact and work well together so that those colors maintain their individuality at different distances. And how that makes the pattern more effective is regardless of whether it's a morning hunt, and the sun's kind of shining on you, or it's a hunt in the evening and the sun actually starts to go down, whether it's an October hunt or a late November hunt or a January hunt, what these colors are going to do is they're actually going to continue to work together to make sure that they're not blobbing or blending together, and make sure that that pattern stays as effective as possible regardless of location or time of year. We wanted to make this pattern the one whitetail pattern that you need. It's the same pattern that you put on in September, early September, as you wear in January. So we basically took all those parts and pieces and we tested them in all these different environments. And we gathered data based off those environments, and just made slight tweaks to all of those things to maintain their effectiveness through an entire season and through an entire range of geography. Specter is hands down the best option for a whitetail hunter because of its proven effectiveness, because of its versatility, and because of its nature of design. There is no other pattern on the market that was designed for whitetail hunting with the amount of science that we put into this pattern based off of the anatomy of a white-tailed deer eye, the tendencies of white-tailed deer, and the environments in which they live in. So this is a pursuit-specific pattern that is as effective as possible when you're in the whitetail woods.